Okay, please go ahead.
Hello, everyone. It is February 12th, 2026, and this is a regular meeting of the Community Resources Committee of the Town Council. Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2025, which extends through June 30, 2027, the ability of public bodies to meet in a remote or hybrid manner without a quorum of members in person, this meeting will be conducted via remote means. Members of the public who wish to access the meeting may do so via Zoom or by telephone. No in-person attendance of members of the public is possible, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. I am going to go around and see if everyone can be heard. Mandy Johanneke,
Present.
Jennifer Taub,
I'm here.
Andy Churchill,
Here.
and Pam Rooney is here. We also have with us Stephanie Ciccarello, and we have Jeff Bagg. So we're still looking for our final member, but I think we're going to just get started. There are no public hearings today, and I will open it up for general public comment. If the attendee would like to speak to something general that's within the purview of CRC, feel free. Otherwise, we can call on you if we have questions down the road. So I'm going to close the public hearing, general public comment session. If there is an opportunity later and there are people in the audience, I hope the committee doesn't mind if I reopen the public comment period to accommodate folks who might want to weigh in. Moving to our action items, we have Jeff Bagg today, who is the new Planning and Economic Development Director, and he offered to give us a quick overview of some priority setting effort on the part of the department. And we would love to see that. If you want to share your screen, that would be great.
Yeah, that'd be great. I just want to say hello. It's nice to meet everybody. I'm really happy to be here. Just quick, like a 2 minute, 1 minute introduction. So, this came up recently that it's actually like my third time in Amherst. I graduated from UMass with an undergraduate degree, and then I also was employed as a senior planner in the planning department from 2008 to 2016. But for the past 10 years, I've had sort of a wide range of municipal planning experience. I was in the private sector for a little bit. I did some regional planning, and then I was the planning director in East Hampton for 6 years. And through that work, it was all municipal, all the time. And so I am kind of bringing, a total of like over 20 years of experience back to Amherst in this role as the planning and economic development director. So I'm really happy to be here. The first 2 months, I started in December, 2 months in a week or so. Just been really talking to people and listening and just getting reacquainted. And so that was something I said in this process is I know about Amherst, but I'm still learning. So I'm out listening and talking to people. That's really been my sort of first order of business. And then I'm about to share my screen with some of the general priorities, but what's not shown is some of the economic development activity that I'm working on, trying to set up renewed data. So market data about the economy in Amherst is really important for us to have available for us to be making future decisions. And so a lot of that was from 2020 or earlier. So I'm quickly doing a revamp of that. You'll hear about it. It's not a robust public process. It's a consultant coming in to help us kind of update all the baseline information. And then you'll see through the process over the next couple months, I put in a joint capital planning request for additional funds to actually do and create an economic development plan for the town of Amherst, and that would be probably like a year-long process with community meetings and resident input and business owner input and just that full process so that we can actually get clear and concise action items with regard to economic development. So those are things that I'm kind of doing that I don't think they directly relate to the CRC's efforts or the planning board, but it is something that's happening kind of in addition to what I'm about to talk about. This list that I'm putting up is draft. It's a work in progress, and it's kind of a amalgamation of a couple different things. So it's some staff items, and then it's also planning board and their housing and zoning subcommittee have been talking about their priorities over the past couple of months. So this is kind of a blend of all of that to just get a snapshot of things that we do think are going to be relevant in 2026. And the heading is really sort of to get either to CRC for discussion of some sort or all the way to town council. Clean energy is bolded. It's obviously it's an ongoing action item. It's definitely the first thing through the gate. But with the remaining kind of five items, there are things that we've been hearing are important for the town to be looking at over the next year, ideally. And I think the purpose of this is to show this group that there's quite a bit that, I think collectively we would like to try to initiate some level of discussion. And so I think the discussion was just letting you know that this is out there. Modifying the mixed use building standards, the HPP note is the planning board, I think I'm not speaking for them, just paraphrasing, I'm kind of summarizing. I think that they feel like that's one of the things that was in the housing production plan that they feel like is important to pursue. Um, and we're hearing it from property owners and developers that there might need to be some tweaks and changes or discussion of how that's working. The PRPs, Planned Research Park, zoning district, town, it's spread out all over different parts of town, but it's it's a little outdated and it's not producing the results that we really thought it would, 30 years ago. So it's just something to talk about allowing housing and also just some general flexibility for more creative spin-off businesses or things like that. So that's just kind of a suite of discussion items. Number four is student housing related issues. I know it's been discussed. It's an important topic. The planning board is really interested in understanding some of it and um, looking at options. And so the way I'm describing it is some of them are limits and regulations, and some of it would be discussion of areas to allow student housing to happen. And so, big topic, not fleshed out yet, but it is something that they, as a group and probably some people in town want to have come forward. And then the last two are quick, but the ED is the educational zoning districts. And so there's areas of Amherst College, Hampshire College, and UMass that have this district over them. And um, we have been approached by Amherst College in particular has an interest in examining some of this with the town. Hampshire College is just maybe some proactive kind of discussions about how that ED district overlays a lot of their properties. It's in the news, so we're just trying to be proactive there. And then UMass is something that I think if we're talking about the other two, we should consider some things about UMass. Those are sort of unknown, but just kind of there, present, important. And then the last other one kind of popped up, and it's just something that we see, not sure the timeline or the trajectory of any of this, but municipal use and standards and criteria for things like a fire station or a DPW facility. So with those ongoing discussions, it does warrant the potential on this list that could rise up and be really important to clarify some of that as a town project, especially if it catches up, speeds up in its process or it becomes apparently necessary to advance those projects. Um, we have that on the list. So those are
Thank you.
really,
I'm gonna
yeah,
pause just for a second and see
please.
if any of the
Yep.
committee members have questions for you. Andy,
You're
you got
muted.
to unmute. You're muted.
Yeah, thank you. I'm curious about number two and number five. Just sort of, can you define them a little bit for a newcomer? In what ways would be modifying mixed-use building standards in outlying village centers, and what do ED zoning districts do? Is that limiting building, or is that limiting taxability, or what are we looking to think about there?
Yep, good question. And I will give like a high level summary of that. I think some of that is going to be fleshed out as it materializes, but with the mixed use building standards, so for a mixed use building like this historic one behind me, first floor is commercial, above it is residential. So we do have a requirement for the amount of the first floor that has to be commercial. Um, I think it's 30%, there's some number percentage. We're just hearing that it's extremely difficult in this day and age in the market to fill that much commercial space. And so it's just identifying that that's an issue that we're encountering, and we want to at least bring it forward as discussion. It's pretty critical for project development and understanding like what's financially feasible for certain things. And so there's a lot there to that would get fleshed out and be narrative and be provided as the discussion comes up. And then for the zoning districts, so the areas that are already established with this overlay district allow the educational institutions to do things that are associated with their educational institution without local permitting, without a lot of oversight. It's giving them their protected class, their protected use, so they're offered that protection to do things under the educational umbrella. For Amherst College, my understanding is that they have their campus has grown since that original ED district was established, and they're interested in having some properties covered by the ED zoning district to allow them a little bit more freedom to make changes or improvements. So again, it's not fleshed out. It's just something that we see potentially coming in 2026. And that's kind of the way that this list is structured is, there's some discussion amongst the planning board members. And then one thing that we hope to work on together with you all is like a timeline to look at the year, the number of meetings available, and how do all these fit together. It's something that I don't have available today, but it is something that we talked about. And then, Pam, if it's okay, the next page, there's some other stuff, of course, because there's a lot going on. These are a slightly different heading. This is priority discussions, and I put in potential future items. But the first three, I bolded because they are also things that we think will come forward in 2026, not necessarily to the CRC or to town council for action, but it will be like something that the CRC wants to be aware of and involved with, at least understanding that these are just discussions that are happening. So downtown design standards, where, there was a year-long process, and we're charting on a schedule to have the public discussion, dialogue, meeting with boards and committees, understanding what are the draft design guidelines. So that will be something that happens all throughout 2026. And we're still kind of navigating how that works. But I think you would imagine there would be a presentation to the CRC about the design standards and what do they mean and what do they include. Similarly, the planning board, the design review board, the historical commission, the commission on persons with disabilities. So all those groups are going to get information, and then obviously the community. So we're planning a community meeting. So it's a big topic, and it's going to be happening all throughout 2026. Second one is housing production plan priorities. The effort to get it adopted was fantastic, but there's a long list of items to consider. And I think, to some extent, each group is kind of looking at those and kind of looking at which they want to prioritize. And so I think the idea has been floated about maybe having CRC host the planning board and Affordable Housing Trust at a meeting to just have a group discussion so that everyone kind of understands what the planning board thinks are their priorities based on the production plan. The Housing Trust has some priorities. They really have focused on like ADUs and supporting the development of, ADUs, and just understanding if the CRC has specific goals coming out of the housing production plan that they want to pursue, and if not, just sharing the information. And then the last thing that we just know is coming, we got a grant from the One Stop for Growth from the Commonwealth to look at East Amherst, so Belchertown Road, College Street area, that village center. Definitely going to take a year until there's an actual product, but there'll be community meetings, there'll be meetings with property owners, and we just think that this is something that we want CRC to be aware of and hopefully engage in some of that discussion. The remainder are other items that the planning board has had on their list. These are kind of like work items I would expect the planning board to be working on in 2026 to understand where they go, what do they do, and then maybe some of those would come next year. The asterisk on temporary uses and technical amendments is something that if there was a need for something else, those are easier to get ready. But as a planning department of only a couple people, like this is a lot for us, but this is what we see as our priority. So that's what I wanted to share. And stop sharing my screen for now.
Terrific. Mandy Jo.
Thank you. That's a lot, Jeff. But I am thrilled after pushing for a few years through the manager's goals to have planning happen. I am thrilled to see that there's lists and there's thoughts going into it and all. I had a question about the multiple principal dwellings on a property. I've been having a lot of conversations, and as many people know, our smallest housing dwelling is 12,000 square feet for the first lot. And that's a lot to get what our priorities have been on the council for the manager of find a way to sort of build more workforce blue collar housing. And I don't necessarily see a focus on workforce blue collar housing on the top of this list. Maybe the mixed use building standard is part of that. Maybe the PRP zoning to allow housing includes some of that, but not really a focus on it. And so I'm curious about this multiple principal dwelling units on a lot. A lot of people might want to buy a home instead of rent one. And unless you have to condo something, you can't do townhomes on a lot and sell each townhome individually. Similar to what you've seen in Philadelphia with the brownstones, or New York City, or I grew up in a twin, 0 lot line homes that each side was a separate property, no HOA, no condo. Is this multiple principal dwellings on a property thinking about it in that sense too, where maybe we would have much smaller lots potentially than the 12,000 square feet minimum that the RG has right now, and it's much bigger in other areas, to allow for essentially subdividing those lots into 2 or 3 dwellings, each of which could be owned individually without condoing?
It's a great question, Mandy. I will be honest and say I don't know. It's definitely something that the planning board has been discussing, but I would, in full disclosure, I'm not attending every planning board meeting. But I do think that's a good question. And what I do know is that number 6 and number 8, so cottage style housing and traditional neighborhood subdivision method, does get a little bit closer to what you're talking about. I'm not sure about the multiple principal dwellings on a lot, but the planning board does feel like that's really important. And I can't speak for them, but I think in terms of the complexity, that just seemed like a longer discussion that they would need to have. They want to have it all throughout 2026, but and they may differ. This I guess the list could be fluid, but I don't know that that's the first thing that would come to you as a CRC in 2026. So I think that was the way we kind of triaged the list. It is a good example, though, of the potential value of having the CRC potentially host the planning board and housing trust in a meeting to just discuss the housing production plan as a general overarching topic, because they may feel energized and happy that you or whether it's individually or the group, feel like that actually is really good. Focus on that. Like, keep working on that. It's important. Like, I don't know that there's been real clarity on the feedback loop, but also the production plan's pretty new. So it just got adopted There hasn't really been that like debrief on how to sift through the priorities because there's so many things that they all can't happen in 1 year, 2 years, probably even 3 years. So, Mandy, I know I'm not answering specifically about the multiple dwellings, but I do know that they are discussing that. So that
Yeah.
should be
Oh,
some level of
it's on
comfort.
the list. It's
It's on
Yeah.
the
definitely on the
list.
list. Yeah.
Thank you. Your answer did help me. Thank you.
Okay, great.
I'm going to go to Jennifer and then Andy.
Hi. So thank you, Jeff. This is really interesting and helpful. Um, so I wanted to ask if you, how much, which I'm sure you do, reach out to your peers in other towns at the MMA conference. I think Andy may have sat in on it too. They had a conference on increasing housing, and somebody spoke from Orleans, and I'm not sure if he was on the select board there, if he was elected, or if he was with the staff, but in the Cape, where they are really challenged to build workforce housing for the local year-round population because everything that gets built is really for short-term rentals over the summer because it's so lucrative. And he said that they actually put in into their zoning that they were able to zone to incentivize housing construction for year-round non-short-term rentals. And we have the same situation in Amherst where really everything that gets built, is built for to be rented at the highest price point the market can bear, and that's students who share the rent. And I'm seeing that in my district, which is, District 4 has the two RG districts, and there's a lot of ADU development since the by right ADU legislation took effect. And it's all ADUs that are the primary dwelling is rented to students and the ADU is rented to students. So it's not doing anything to serve our workforce, our family, anybody else but that market. And I know that I could probably try and reach out to someone on the select board in Orleans, but is that something you could do, reach out to maybe their town manager to see what they were able to do with their zoning to help ensure that everything that's built is not, in their case, short-term summer rentals, and in our case, just, rented to students who share the rent.
Yeah, I was at the same session, so I listened to Mass Housing Partnership and the other speakers, and then I was there for that person who spoke from Orleans. So yeah, it was on the list to kind of try to get examples or to build that information, for the planning board as they navigate some of those items. So I'll uh, raise up my note and I'll get it to the planning
Yeah.
board hasn't really started to dive into any of these yet. I think that they're still in the process of establishing their priority list, but I do think that it makes sense to look at some other communities. I mean, I think there's always stuff that you could potentially try to extrapolate from another community and see how it fits here. So I think that's good advice. There was a couple
I
other
mean, yeah,
examples
I
and
mean, on the
notes that,
on the Cape, they were actually able to legislate that their ADUs are for are not for short-term rentals.
yeah, the
That
Cape
was
is interesting.
actually,
They have their own special legislation, so sometimes there's things that happen in the Cape that don't happen elsewhere. But
but
it's
they
hot.
should.
It was definitely yeah. Well, they got all the seasonal community stuff too. That
Yeah,
those
but we're a
designations
seasonal
that
community. You could make that argument. I mean,
yep. So that actually is on the list too. It's not like on this list
yeah.
to look at seasonal communities in us.
I
But
guess what I'm
yes,
trying to
Andy,
so
say is I
Jennifer,
support, I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off.
no, I think it's important to get that information. It's a good example. So I'll promise to find that and get it to the planning board when they're starting to talk about
Yeah.
that.
Because I was just going to say, I
perfect.
support what Mandy just said. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm babysitting a dog here who's making noise. Um, that it would be great to be able to build more housing, along the lines of what, Councillor Haneke was discussing. But if we could ensure that it wouldn't all be, the housing production plan said that there were 9,000 students who didn't live in Amherst now who wanted to live here. So we could build a lot of housing and it would not serve our
Mhm.
workforce.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. It's a good
So
Thank you.
thank
comment.
you.
Um,
Okay.
Andy,
You're muted, Andy.
I remember another example from that session at the MMA where I think it was Concord, but I'm not sure, where they brought together their various housing related committees and boards and had some sort of consortium. I don't know exactly how it worked. I tried to do a Google search, but housing in Concord brought up a whole bunch of different things. So, but the idea, I like the idea of getting the planning board and the Affordable Housing Trust and us together to sort of, figure out what our common or respective agendas would be. The only thing I would add to that is that it would be really great. I see housing as a revenue source as well as just as dealing with the housing crunch that we have, and so it might be worth bringing the finance side of things in to say what would it take to erase our structural deficit, and then how many projects would it take to do that, and what would be acceptable to the townspeople in what parts of town to help do that. So sort of mapping the revenue axis as well as the housing supply axis.
Thank you.
Yeah, I will just say I think revenue is critical. Just understanding that that's growth that at some level the town needs to continue to sustain the services it's providing. So I do think that's an important narrative to kind of weave through all these discussions as they unfold and move forward. So I think that makes sense.
I'd like to just wrap up, but also say that in fact, CRC has on its list of responsibilities, economic development. So I'm
Okay.
going to speak for the committee that we would be very interested in hearing more about certainly the data, the opportunities, and as that translates to what does the CRC do to help promote whatever you're trying to accomplish.
I think that's helpful to be reminded of. And I think if I didn't describe it, this data collection's phase one, and there will be results in products and information as a result of that. But then phase two is going to be the longer, much more robust community engagement. And I haven't started any of that. So that's something where that'll be something we can bring to the CRC and make sure that the engagement plan and that whole program is brought to you before it's done. So before it's created,
Super.
I should say.
Super. Do you feel comfortable sharing your lists that you showed us with this committee?
Yep.
If you
Yeah.
want to email those to me, I will distribute them to the rest of the committee.
Yeah, I will put a draft on
Yeah.
there, and I just might put a note that it could be subject to change. So like the planning board
Sure.
is still kind of going through the discussion, but I really genuinely tried to distill, and we talked, Nate Malloy is the staff person to the planning board, and we talked, and so I feel like the list is solid, but I will put could change, and I'll put a draft on it and I'll send it.
Totally.
Okay.
Totally. Yeah. And we certainly respect the fact that each entity is going to handle some of these things at a different timeline. So that's understandable. Draft is good. Jennifer.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that Jeff, you were probably in East Hampton when it was having its Renaissance downtown. So
Part
I
of it.
think
Yep.
it's great that you're here, and
Thanks.
we could take some of that magic.
A
I mean,
lot of the stuff
we
happening in
have a
East
great
Hampton was,
downtown, but
yeah, a lot of stuff happening in East Hampton was happening way before I arrived, but I helped, I did what I could while I was there. So thanks.
Jeff, thank you. We'll hear more from you, I know, in the future, and really appreciate you being available to talk to us.
Yeah, and I'll stay on the call. I'll turn on my camera,
Okay.
but I'll listen to Stephanie's discussion, and just if you need me for the clean energy stuff, I'll be here too.
Super. Wonderful. Thank you
Great.
very much.
Thank you.
And I will note that we also have Nate in the audience, if we have questions for him. Stephanie, let's turn over to you. Do you know everyone on this committee also? Have you met Andy?
I did attend the last meeting, so I don't know that we were formally introduced at the last meeting. but Really nice to meet you, Andy.
Nice
And
to
I
meet
should have done
you.
the same for Jeff, so sorry. Sorry, Jeff. Back in December, the CRC asked for assistance from staff to go through and answer 10 or 12 questions that we sort of had left unanswered as we wrapped up our work on the draft solar bylaw, clean energy bylaw. And the staff did a wonderful job. The memo, their response is in the packet, and I know you all have read it. Stephanie, I think in working forward, do you want to just give a very short overview of any of the key, some of those key questions and how they've sort of settled out through the staff responses?
Well, I think there were a few key points that and I think I even mentioned some of them at the last meeting. But one concern was sort of the overall process of how this new structure is going to work in terms of the changes in the state regulatory guidelines for siting and permitting. And the question was, who is going to be the point person? So the way that's been handled within the context of the bylaw is to identify the town manager and or their designee. So that it's really not, the onus isn't really on the CRC to identify who that person is. It's really kind of a town manager function. So in terms of the actual process, that will be worked out with the town manager and staff. And once I think that process gets finalized, it will be shared with all of you, of course, and the council. But I think it's, I know that was sort of a question that was looming over this review and updating process. And so I just wanted to sort of alleviate this committee from feeling the need to have to sort of identify exactly what that process is. So there's that. And then I think there were some questions about identifying the different categories and sizes of the systems. And so staff had put together 2 charts that can be added to Articles 3 and 5, which would help identify the tiered identification of how to identify those projects. So that has been updated. I think some of the questions, just in terms of general questions about setbacks, some of those things were addressed within the staff comments. Some of the distances that have been recommended to you all are a result of consistency with other setback guidelines, or that they were recommendations for protection of, for instance, private well resources. And that came from the Water Protection Supply Committee. So staff incorporated those recommendations into the updates. So other than that, I think those are kind of some of the bigger things. And I know we summarized a lot within the context of the memo questions that were answered. So you have all.
Yes. I really appreciate that. One remaining topic that may or not be addressed yet, and that is the topic of fees. So we have a normal, somebody submits an application, development application, they pay a fee, and it sounds like that it's not clear, who's going to actually end up developing the fee for a comprehensive permit. And Mandy may have the answer, but when I think about the work for a 40B housing project or any kind of comprehensive project, I know there is sort of additional staff time to help shepherd something through the process just because of the accelerated time frame that's required. So that's at some point we probably talk about fees. Mandy.
I think Stephanie and staff addressed that in the draft bylaw section 18.07, where they said to rewrite the fee section to say all applicable fees apply and must be submitted with a complete application, because that then allows the town to promulgate the fee schedule as they are already allowed to do. And so we don't have to put it in the bylaw, but it would still apply as long as there's a fee line on whatever the schedule is.
Got it. So the ability to set the fee is now taken care of, but I guess in my mind it's like, okay, who's going to actually sit down and figure out what the fee needs to be for, a complex project like this. And so it's the ability to set the fee is obviously, or now that you say that is captured, but who's going to set it?
And I believe that's something that staff, the town manager and staff will address as they do with the other permitting fees.
Yep.
So
great.
I think this is just, yet another fee that we need to calculate, and we just haven't, sort of addressed it. We have been having conversations. It's not as if we've just kind of keep putting this off. We're just trying to figure it out. And, we definitely think because it is going to be a substantial amount of staff time that we want to reflect the time that that's going to take.
Good. So, I'd like to, just sort of dive into the document that I hope, Andy, you've had a chance to read and sort of start to absorb. Again, appreciate the staff comments tremendously. They answer a whole lot of, the questions that were posed by us as we turn that document over to you. Mandy.
Do you want me to share it and do the changing like we've done in the past?
I would love that. I actually texted you earlier to ask if you would and appreciate it greatly.
I must have missed that. Sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. And I think if everyone is in agreement as we make our way through the documents and if we can have the text as big as we can possibly get it, that would be great. As we go through and say we agree with the change, can we actually delete the comment and the notification? So as we go through, we either accept the change and clean it up as we go. Mandy, you've got your hand up.
I'm not sure I can unraise my hand now that I'm sharing a screen. I'm trying to
Okay,
figure
well,
out how to.
that's fine.
But so I thought I had unraised it and then shared. I don't have a question, but yes, I can do that as we go through.
Okay, Andy.
Yeah, I'm just coming up to speed on this. I just had sort of a global question, which is, I know there's state regulations or whatever, and just wanted to get a sense of what are we trying to accomplish in general with this bylaw? Are we trying to align with the state? Are we trying to go beyond the state? And are we trying to encourage or restrict solar power?
I'm happy to try to answer that. We want to make sure that we reflect what the state is requiring, and if there are, in our case, dimensional setbacks and things that the state doesn't necessarily set specifically, those are setbacks that reflect, as Stephanie said, existing guidance within the town for protection of clean water, for drinking water. This is a bylaw which will promote and regulate solar production. So if we get solar production, it's handled in a careful manner. It's definitely not precluding solar development.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else want to add to that? Okay. So I would love to just dive in and we talk about the insertion of new language from staff. And what's the easiest way? If I just say, okay, change it. If somebody has an issue, speak up.
I think that would be it. Do it by section or mini section and say, anyone got questions? Otherwise, we'll accept the change or accept the comment or do it that way, something like that.
Super. That's great. Okay, for section 1801 purpose, does anyone have a reason not to accept the staff change? No. Let's accept the staff change. Great. Section 180101 through 05. There was a deletion of one section. And it's primarily because we now are talking about a tiered system. Does anyone have a comment or a need to work through this? I see no hands. In the next section, 1803.
Should I let me type the rewrite in the 180102 that
okay.
Stephanie
yes, thank
recommended.
you.
I actually have a question about that one. I I think it's. So the question I had for Stephanie was when you had the rewrite that just said with sections of this bylaw, I wasn't sure if you wanted to specify what sections, because I think the question was for some of it, do the application requirements that are extensive apply to tier 1 accessory uses and tier 1 ground mounted? Or is that why should we continue to name certain sections?
I think the idea was to continue to name sections. That's my recollection. I would ask Nate if he has, Nate was part of this editing process, so if he has a different recollection, I would ask him to comment.
Nate, let's see if we bring you in, allow to talk. Nate, are you there? He may be not quite with us. Let's leave this as is and we'll move on. I
Well,
think that's
Yeah, we'll leave it like that.
good. We'll keep all the comments. Section 1803 definitions. I had one comment, and that is the agrivoltaics. The suggestion is to, oops, you're still busy with something else.
No, I was on the comment for just definitions, reading Stephanie's redefine accessory use. Did we get an accessory use definition?
I don't see it added yet,
Okay.
no.
So I will leave that comment there.
Okay,
Yeah.
I will say too that and I apologize because I'm not as skilled at the editing as Mandy Jo was. And sometimes when I made changes, they just sort of got automatically incorporated, although they should have shown
Oh,
up.
that means that one might be,
So
that might be the
might have been-
redefined use.
Exactly.
Okay.
But we should double
Oh.
check that one.
So the 180300 is actually the suggested, no, it's not the suggested wording.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't really read the comments that well. So I'm trying to refresh what that.
Here, I'll
And-
add a comment to check to see if it's different than what we sent you.
Yeah, that would be great. And I can get back to you before the next meeting, obviously.
Yeah, we'll try to wrap up a lot of these if we can. The 0301 agrivoltaic canopy, solar, blah, 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 whatever, as defined in Article 12. There was staff discussion about, I think, dropping the use of agrivoltaics and the discussion of agrivoltaics altogether. Is that correct?
That is correct. That was the staff recommendation.
So when we get to, I think it's the soil section, one of the tenets of agrivoltaics is that the work on the land won't keep it from being used for agriculture in the future. We don't want to do anything that would preclude its future use again as agriculture. And I just want to keep that as a note that I don't want to lose that ability to hold, a development to their feet to the fire. So if it's okay, I'd actually like to keep this comment just okay. I see no suggestions or changes on the next page, which is 180305 through 180318. Did anybody
So-
have that?
There was a request to move everything into Article 12, I think. So,
And staff said, let's keep
well, staff said move it
definitions
all
here.
into Article 12.
Oh, I read it the
Definition
other
should
way.
remain, sorry, move everything into Article 18, not 12. Remove them from Article 12. So all of these will need replaced. I just can't do it on the fly.
Got it.
At least
Okay.
all the ones that say as defined in 12 will just pop in that 12 definition unless that was changed, recommended
it.
change by staff.
Great, right. Yeah, make a note of that, sorry. Can you make a note of that somewhere? I think we understand it, but I'll just make a, okay, so we'll bring the Article 12 definitions here into 18. Got it. Okay.
Sorry, can I just jump in real quick, Pam? Because there was
Yeah.
a stuff that there should be a statement that clarifies the definitions refer to this article only for all of the ones that stay in this article. It's written in the comments. I just wanted to make sure that didn't get lost.
It might need reworded. But does that work, Stephanie?
Yes,
For now, at least.
yes.
I think Mandy, just what you just passed by though had a couple strikeouts. Do you want to take care of those or we just come back and clean it later?
I will clean this. These are the changes we're making today. That are not already changes that we're accepting. Does that make sense? So these are what I'm
Yes.
adding right now.
Oops, you just 15, number 15.
Right. I'm working on trying to find.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Oh, that one's one that's already defined in Article 12, so we don't need that one then. It's already in the current bylaw. Stephanie, when we get to something like large scale, small scale, it seems like you guys went to tiers. So do we even need the large, medium, and small scale definitions anymore?
Not if you're going with tiers.
But we might need the tier, but
Exactly.
maybe not.
Right.
Okay.
I think it'd be helpful to have the tier.
Okay. So I'll leave those two for those. 23 here. Shall I accept that?
Yes. So 033 was the next one with Stephanie, do you want to talk a little bit about this? It's drinking water regulations. Oops, we're not
Oh yeah,
there
this
yet.
one.
Yeah, as defined as surface water supply protection zones, A, B, and C.
Right. So this came from the Assistant Superintendent of DPW to make language consistent.
Great, thank you, Mandy, for catching all these comments stashed somewhere in one of these little bullets. Great, okay.
Do we need,
We can accept that.
that comment is good. We're done with that
Yep.
comment.
Yep.
Okay.
Great. Okay. Section 1805. Oops, no, sorry, 1804. Is there any change in 1804? I see none. 1805, pre-filing requirements. There's a note. And we have taken care of the individual responsible. So I think we can. Great.
I'm just making something up here.
Well, we cover in 1808, the consolidated permit application requirement does say it shall be submitted to the town manager or designee. So I'm not sure if we have to cover it both here in 05 and in 08.
I think we want a general statement of who the local government representative is, because that's the wording that's used for any purposes, because we might not cover some of the purposes of what is used, referenced as local government representative for the purposes of the regulations and the law. But we can come back to it with I can leave a comment of is this check that definition and whether it's necessary.
Okay, great.
Which brings me to, in that sense, do we want to get that draft consolidated permitting bylaw from KP Law?
If I could just comment on that, I think you
Sure.
had wanted to get it just to see if there's anything that potentially should be included in this one.
Yeah.
So I think that's what you all decided at the last meeting.
Do
Yeah.
you want me to request that, Pam, since I had the conversation?
Sure.
Okay. Will do.
Super. So as a heading, so let's go back just a second. So 1805, it's now pre-filing requirement and local rep. So even though I'm getting a little confused here, 1808 does talk about the submittal requirements. I guess it's fine to have it here, 1805.
Yeah,
Okay.
so the local government rep is used not just for submittal requirements, but also for pre-filing requirements, also for filing of the final permit, also for, there's like a lot of things that it's referenced in the CMRs. So this would cover all of it. And it might just be better to put it somewhere else in the end.
Okay, but that's good. So it covers the
But
bases.
it's somewhere now.
Yeah. So section 06, site suitability assessments, minimization and mitigation requirements. And I think that title was added. Any reason not to accept that title?
That's there. It's just the comment. We had a comment on that, and I don't think we need to change anything based on Stephanie's comment.
Oh, okay, right. So we can just accept that and drop that off.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, this is fees. Was there anything, my question on, okay, I've already covered this with how are the fees determined, but but we know it will be handled by the town as a way of preparing for any kind of application. I don't think I need to insert anything here.
It's just changing the language to what Stephanie recommended.
Yeah. Okay, now we get into the lengthy section of submittal requirements. Great.
We have to figure out where to put that in. So Stephanie, for this comment here about the model bylaws, what applied, what didn't, we cleared that up in the applicability section? Is that what you meant by this comment?
I believe so. Because so some of these comments happened, I think this was one of our earlier review sessions. So, and we did go back through even some of our initial comments just to see if there was anything outstanding. So I think we did clarify that.
Okay. So we think this one's resolved.
I think so.
And this one was resolved.
Okay. And we're accepting the suggestions. That's great.
So let me ask a question about that one. The reason this was in here, 18.08.04, is if we go up to here, 0.08 to 03. Oh, because we didn't say 04, never mind.
Right.
Okay. That's why. So that's that.
Yep, so we're accepting those changes. Okay. Oh, and then I had a question, but it's really going to be more of a process thing. So whoever the permit granting authority is, the PGA, if they find let's say the mitigation plan has been submitted and the PGA says we don't find this sufficient, how does the PGA stop the clock on the 12-month process? And I think that's something we'll have to work through. But that worries me that, something comes in as a really shabby mitigation plan and it's just not acceptable, but there isn't time to require them to correct it without damaging the timeline. Stephanie, you have your hand up.
I do. The way this has been all laid out is that applications have to be complete when they're submitted, and that starts the clock. But recall that there's a pre-filing period. So some of those questions can be answered during that period of time. And if someone submits any element that is deemed incomplete, then it's an incomplete application. So I think that's the answer.
Okay, thank you. So it's Jennifer. Sorry, I missed your hand.
No, that was very helpful to hear Stephanie's reply first. So I guess I'm just wondering is whoever receives the application, so let's say they look at the mitigation plan. I'm just wondering how much that person will have the expertise and the time to really determine if each section is complete enough to to close the application? Because they were so, at MMA during the session, they were said that there would be no exceptions to the 12-month timeline, even if the applicant agreed that they needed more time. So and that's
Stephanie?
what I'm just wondering is how will that intake process work? Who will be looking at it? I know we may not have determined that yet, but would they really be able to determine if every section is complete to the standards of the permit granting authority? If that makes sense.
So it sounds like in that pre-filing period, you have to have all those kinds of issues worked out. And I don't know if an applicant would just continue to roll along, even if they heard complaint, because they would be pretty sure that nobody would be able to hold them against. I don't know.
That's a good point.
Is
I don't know.
Stephanie's hand up?
Thank you.
Stephanie.
Yeah, so even though it's sort of designated as one person, there's just really no way that this process can happen without input from the various boards and committees that have to do the review. Agreed. It's a lot of onus on one person to sort of know with the processes for each and every board. So it doesn't really, honestly, totally make sense. But I think the idea is that it's coordinated communication with those other boards and committees. So for instance, that designee will have to work with, communicate with Erin Jacques in terms of the Conservation Commission process, or they'll have to communicate with folks from the planning department or those that work with the ZBA. And so I think there's going to have to be a lot of coordination and communication to sort of ensure that that particular PGA's requirements are being addressed. And I think that communication has to happen in the pre-filing. So, and I think that's the whole point of the filing, is to sort of have that time frame in which to identify what those things are. Agreed. I think we all find this, and that's why even, we are sort of like trying to figure out how is this gonna work? And it really won't be the onus of one person. It'll probably have to be the coordination of several people working together.
Thank you. Mandy, you have your hand up.
Yeah.
Really?
Really. The 1804 starts with applicants for MGPI, LGPI, standalone BESS, and all of this with that. It needs rewritten for the tier system. What tiers should be included here so that I can rewrite it offline?
I think those were maybe identified in the charts that
Okay.
that were shared with you, so I would refer to those.
So it's
If
the
I-
charts.
The charts that were submitted with a memo?
Right, yeah,
Yep.
but is it everything but what's up in that 1801 section that has the administrative approval or accessory use approval?
I think I'll have to double check on that for you.
I would think so. So it would be, I think it's tier 2 and 3 of solar and any BESS that's not it's like greater than 250 kilowatts. That's just recollection from the table, sorry.
I'll check it, and the next one will have that, whatever it is in there.
Mhm.
But I think the question, so everyone understands, is because the very, the house mounted or the solar canopy parking is administratively covered, and so doesn't necessarily have to follow for this major application process and all the requirements that a larger project needs. That's the understanding?
Yes, that sounds
Yeah.
right.
Great, okay. Okay, so 1804, that's great. Thank you for catching that. Section A, B, and C, are there any changes that we want to make or accept? I like the G, I like the wording of that. It is a measurement over 100-foot distance, that's correct.
Pam, I'm sorry to interject, but Jeff has his
Sure.
hand.
Please do. Yeah. Hi, Jeff.
Hi. I don't have comments specifically on the language, but the discussion about the completeness determination, I just wanted to chime in quickly because initially when I caught up to speed on this, I was nervous about that as well. But when you look at the pre-submission requirements under the CMR that's listed, I actually got a great deal of comfort about that process because it's multi steps that happen before the application is submitted. And I built myself a little timeline, but so there's a requirement that 60 days prior to submitting, um, the applicant already has to get a site suitability from DOER. So they've already submitted information from the state and get a response. And then there's a required staff meeting that's 45 days prior to submission, and they have to provide all the information they have available. There's a list, and I think this mitigation plan is part of it. And then there's a public information session that happens 10 days prior. And then there's another checklist that they have to submit, and it gives the town 10 days to review the checklist for a determination. And then finally, they submit, and then the town has 45 days to make that determination that it's actually complete. And so that's actually a lot of checks and balances that you don't get when you're just reading the bylaw. There's a lot in that pre-submission stuff that when we were looking at this, that started to give staff a lot more comfort to know that the applicant has to be taking it very seriously at all those precursor stages, all leading towards their best effort is to give a complete application. And then that during that 45-day review period, there's some language in there about us determining that it's complete. And if we determine it's not complete, the clock doesn't start until we say this all looks pretty good, like good to go into that 12-month process. So I do want to give the committee some assurances that there is a robust process leading up to that application. And maybe that's worth fleshing out as you go a little bit further. I think like the planning board might want to know that information as they get a hold of this. And maybe that's something that we can help with. It's just really hone in on what's actually required before they submit.
So your timeline sounds very appropriate for us to see, and also planning board. That's great.
Yeah, I think being aware of that timeline that actually happens all before they get to this bylaw might be helpful.
Thank you. Mandy, is your hand up
I
again?
can't take it down when I'm
That's
sharing
that's
a
okay. I
screen,
just
so I'll
just want-
wave when I want to speak.
Perfect. I just wanted to check. So we're on we've accepted G and on H. So I think this is for trees that are bigger, older trees. This is like a 60-year-old tree. And I think the state required this. We had talked about maybe eliminating this requirement, but I think it's appropriate if it's within the area of the project that will be removed. And I think that plays to mitigation plans or that kind of thing. So I'd like to keep it. But again, it's just within the area that would be cut rather than the entire parcel.
I had a question about Stephanie's comment. The comment was survey that should be included in the plan. So did that mean that staff wanted this somewhere else?
Well, again, I think if my recollection, I'm sorry that Nate is no longer with us, but my recollection is that we felt that there should be a survey so that when the plan is submitted, it includes the survey that identifies those in the project area. And again, specifically to the project area, our concern was not the entire site. So I don't know if it's not sort of otherwise expressly written, you may want to ensure that it is.
Well, we have an existing, I mean, this is all under existing conditions plans. It's asking them to identify large trees, I guess, as something they would have to go survey. So to me, it sounds like it would be surveyed. they know in advance that they have to pick up really large trees.
I think this was just, I think, staff wanted it to be clear that it should be a survey, or it should be included in the survey with the plan.
Okay. Well, all of these are based on a ground-based survey prepared and stamped by a registered land surveyor, including the following. So it is picked up under what needs to be a land-based survey. It feels like it's covered.
And it very well may be. I think some of the comments came from folks who only had had a cursory review prior to discussion, so
Great.
I think they just wanted to ensure it's clear.
Okay.
Are we done with that comment then?
Yeah. So let's see, number 3. Great. Gone.
We had this one. I don't know why that comment is under active farmland.
It's hard to follow the.
Being accidentally.
Yeah, it just might have got moved somehow.
Right, exactly.
So we just defined wellhead protection areas, right?
Yep.
We are. Distance should be included within all setbacks identified in 1809.
Which
Oh,
I
so
think it is.
Well, I think, Stephanie, what you were trying to get at is private wells within, instead of maybe 400 feet of property lines, it's within all setbacks identified in section 18.09.
Yes.
Would that be a better way to do it?
Okay. Okay.
I'm just adding it instead of deleting that part.
Yep. That's a simple correction. Thank you.
So we're going to use this language when it comes up again. Okay.
I think that was it. This number D, that's a good catch. Great. Okay, now we're on to the next section, which is all of the D 1 through 15.
Why was snow storage in red? Oh,
I
Stephanie said
think-
keep it. Okay.
yes.
It
there
was
a question.
added from the state example. And it doesn't really make a lot of sense to me, but it's fine if somebody at the state level thought it was appropriate. I think that seems like more for an urban area where you gotta like figure out where you're gonna store your snow.
Well, but we have that issue too, so. There's also implications for wetlands, that's why. That request to sort of, to ensure we keep it in was from Aaron Jacques.
Great, good. E was a keep this in. That note can be removed. Let's if we could just back, yeah, the 18 4, it was a reference to
That-
the emergency plan.
Yeah, that's just a highlight in case we change the section numbers as we go through this so that it's
Good.
fine, easy to see them, to fix them when they come through. So that's not anything other than
Great,
this is still draft mode.
great.
But visualizations.
Yep. Then down to Q, which is the noise level projected to be generated. And the good question was, at what distance are you, is it at property line?
That's what I
Stephanie,
would think.
Yeah, do you have any recollection, but a noise projected to be generated?
So yeah, staff was asking this question, so
Yeah.
because it states it, but it doesn't state at what point you're measuring.
Would that be satisfactory, Stephanie?
At the property line?
Yes.
Great. R through S, R, S, and T, excuse me. The question was, do we need a hazardous material management plan? And the comment by staff is include this. One is a plan and the other is expectations. I had
Well,
made note of that myself. I think this is a good answer.
Yep. So we're not changing that at all.
Right. Yep. We get rid of these comments. Think of all these comments we're getting rid of.
The next one will be much clearer. All those resolves will just disappear.
Good. Impact analysis. So again, staff review on all of T1 through 7. Is this necessary given the site suitability assessment? And I guess the question is, and maybe Stephanie, you can weigh in. Do we have to list this item T? I think the question was, right? Do we have to list item T because it's already required as part of a submittal? I mean, an application.
right, and I think the bottom line response is that Erin was suggesting that yes, you do need to keep it, and that you should
Okay.
keep.
Okay, great. Okay, now I think we're down to 09, dimensional
Yep.
standards. So solar photovoltaic installations, the note is, can the section be combined for more efficiency? And the response
Can
is,
it be combined with the best section?
yeah,
And Stephanie said the setbacks are different, so.
yeah. So
And so
we'll
keep them
say,
separate.
yep.
Yep.
So 18090102, the idea of with the exception of the building mounted and tier 1 accessory uses makes a lot of sense.
Yes, that does.
Okay, this next section below the 0102, and these are the front setbacks. In each of these, there is the phrase, so it says it shall be, the front yard depth shall be at least 20 feet in all zoning districts where such uses are allowed. And my question is, do we really need to say where such uses are allowed? Because they won't be building here if the use isn't allowed.
Where are you?
In 18090101.
Okay.
So in each of these, it says where such uses are allowed. Well, it's sort of self-explanatory. It's explanatory. If they're not allowed in a particular zone, then it's not an issue. If we,
So
does,
you think we can get rid of that?
yes.
Wait, not the fence line part.
Well,
Right.
actually, I think in all zoning districts stands, or maybe it doesn't. Maybe we don't need that either.
I think we kept that in all zoning districts.
I would be concerned about keeping the all zoning districts without the phrase where such uses are allowed, given at the MMA conference, the attorney warned of having those potential conflicts. If you say all zoning districts, are you overriding the use table? Like, whereas all zoning districts where such uses are allowed will not override the use table. Like, would you be creating that
That's-
conflict? I'm not saying it would.
I have that language actually, so I'm not sure why this version differs from what I have, but I can read the version that I have that was staff comments, and it says, the front yard depth shall be at least 20 feet measured from the property line to the fence line in all zoning districts where such uses are allowed,
Yeah.
provided, however, that where the lot is within or abutting a residential district, the front yard shall not be less than 50 feet.
Okay,
Is that
so
supposed to be the
let's
front yard depth shall not be, or setback?
It says the front yard, sorry, let me find this again.
I think the front yard depth, I think yeah.
Yeah.
We usually say setback.
Yeah. We could just change these to setback. Yeah, so Stephanie, Pam was suggesting that the phrase be deleted as redundant.
Let's leave it. Let's leave it. I mean, you know exactly what it means. Yeah. And then in O24, it says increase the minimum setback requirement. Period.
Getting
don't-
rid of the max. Yeah.
We don't need the word minimum. It's increase this. It's no longer a minimum setback. It's the maximum setback. So if we just say increase the setback requirements.
Does that make sense,
makes-
Stephanie?
Yes, I think that sort of stays within the intent of the comment.
Okay.
Okay, in O3, these O3, O4, O5, O3,
So we're
So
under
we're-
solar. So I'm curious why Stephanie staff said 250 because it's similar to an underground storage tank. That would make sense for BESS, but this is an above ground SPI.
I think the idea was that because of potential runoff and all that, that they felt that, because of runoff from potential PFAS, even though we're saying you can't have PFAS, but just in case of runoff issues, I think the idea was to be consistent with other setbacks. And again, this came from DPW. This was a DPW recommendation.
I'm comfortable with a higher figure. The next two, the O1, O4, and O5 to me seemed very, very similar. If we say in O4, it's a minimum no disturbance area of 400 feet from a public water supply shall be maintained. And then in 05, it says all installations shall be constructed outside of a 400-foot no disturbance zone from public water. Isn't that the same thing?
So yeah, is public water supply different than public surface water supply?
Yes, because public water supply includes groundwater and public surface water is surface water. So they are different.
But public
Okay.
water supply includes surface water too?
I believe the public water supply refers to groundwater.
Okay,
Public surface water is different.
okay.
So
But-
that's why staff didn't combine them.
Okay.
One of these says water supply well, right?
Oh yeah, public water supply well. Yeah,
Good.
which is definitely different than surface water supply.
Right. So that's the groundwater.
Great. Good. Oh, wonderful. Okay, let's see. We in the standalone and co-located. You want to accept that?
No, this one was, Stephanie said it should be no disturbance. So could it be combined from, instead of be constructed outside, is it just the same language, but replace public water supply well with public surface water supply?
Sorry, I'm trying to follow your question because say that again, Mandy.
So we asked in 05 here, should it be no disturbance or be constructed? And you said no disturbance. So should the language mirror the 04 language except simply replacing public water supply well with public surface water supply? Because I think there's a buffer zone versus a no disturbance area.
Right, we want them all to be no disturbance.
Right, we want them to be no disturbance.
So could we just then
This-
get rid of 05 and add public water supply well or public surface?
I mean,
Yes.
yes, you could. You could, as
Yes.
long as you say specifically public supply well, which implies underground, and surface supply, which is above, right? So you want to define both of them if you want to have that in one. You just have to list both.
Just
Yes.
list both and then we can get rid of this one.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
great.
And specifically say no disturbance, yeah.
Yeah.
Good. So the next one is okay, now our numbers change. Minimum of 200, no disturbance. Okay, great. Straightforward.
Okay, so this one's resolved.
Standalone. Standalone and co-located BESS installations.
Is it co-located now too?
I feel like we got rid of co-located. Because I think that became like another category, and I don't know if we have that comment elsewhere. I'm sorry that it's not referenced here, but I know there was a question about identifying co-located.
In the table, it includes co-located. It's solar installations and co-located BESS.
Okay,
as
as
a-
long as it's included there. I know the conversation came up, but I don't remember what we ended up saying. So
The new table that you guys gave us was standalone BESS or ground mounted solar with or without co-located BESS, but there was no co-located BESS listed in the use table.
right, because if it's ground mounted with BESS, then it's co-located.
Well, but the BESS then becomes the accessory use, is that it? Let me
Yes.
look.
I believe that was the logical
No, the
thinking there.
accessory uses don't have BES in their tiers. It's just behind the meter.
Right.
Oh, no, and or BES. Okay, no, it does. So accessory uses do include BES.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't have the
Yes.
tables open right in front of me, so
Yeah,
I'm trying to do this.
tier one is photo SPS, building mounted, canopy or ground mounted under 25 kilowatts and or best under or equal to 100 kilowatts. So
Yeah.
we have them combined. And then tier two is canopy or ground mounted of a larger size and or best at greater or equal to less than or equal to 1,000.
So we have to determine whether co-located needs to stay here. Or is it just right? That's our question right now.
Well, if we don't say co-located best, we can't apply any of these conditions to a project that has BES. And so we would lose our ability to, I think, to kind of regulate the best part of it. Because we don't talk about BES in the 0901.
Yeah. Well, I think we need BES installations. The question is co-located too. Okay, never mind. We're leaving it as is, right?
Yes.
Okay. I think I'm getting into my head too much.
I'm not sure what the note for 0203 is.
We included, we inserted language.
Yeah.
Great.
We accept that. We want to get rid of the minimum here like we
Yeah,
did in the
yeah.
one above.
Yep. And again, this is the buffer, not the buffer zone, but it's the same conversation about the minimum no disturbance area.
And I can make a comment as to the recommended distance. The Water Protection Committee had recommended an additional 200 feet of protection, so that's why this went from 400 to 600.
So we have the, we'll call it the upgrades from the staff. Can we accept those changes of the distance?
Okay, so then we're at these two deletions.
Yeah. We have covered those above.
And then this is an addition that staff added.
Everyone okay with that addition?
Yes. Okay, we're making good time. I'm taking a note. It's 2:36 and we're making good progress. We have, I'd like to reserve, so we'll go for another 7 or 8 minutes and then switch gears. So now into design requirements. Stephanie, can you weigh in here? The access roads shall be planned and constructed in compliance with you talking about state regulations?
Yes, in addition to
Okay.
those. So
Okay,
Is that just what I need to add?
yep.
yes.
Well, it says including in, this is fine. Yeah, we don't have to say state. Clearances, staff believes this to be okay as written,
Okay.
so we can accept that comment. In glare, yeah, thank you. The second paragraph under land clearing reduces the area of disturbance to 5 acres at a time. I think that's great. I thought 10 was sort of the business or industry standard, but 5 is better.
Federal, five is the federal requirement, and you can't go larger than the federal requirement.
Oh, great. So, right here, the applicant, this paragraph, applicants shall avoid using, I just had a note, in that paragraph, shall avoid siting in a manner that would require construction or tree clearing activities or compacting soil within 100 feet of groundwater monitoring wells. So a groundwater monitoring well is very different than a water supply or drinking well, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so this is something that they're doing on site to test whatever their movement of water in the site. And the suggestion is that they can't do any clearing within 100 feet of those wells.
So for the next one, this comment about clean, is that a recommendation? Sort of engineering need and imports with, is it something instead of just a rewriting that the fill must be clean or clean fill?
So I guess the question that staff had is, how do you determine clean fill? Because are you saying, you were talking about, or I think the question had come up about invasive plant species?
Yeah.
And staff isn't aware of any way to make the determination whether or not it includes or doesn't include invasive plant species. There are certainly ways to tell if fill is clean in regards to contaminants, but not identification of invasives. Like there's no analysis for that. So they just wanted to be clear when you were saying, saying this, you're identifying invasive species, but there's no test for it.
So it does say it has to be obtained from a source approved by the Department of Public Works. And my only thought was if you had a site that was, your source of material was a site surrounded by very obviously, you know, um, invasive species, that maybe they could say, hey, that's not a good site. We're very likely to bring all these invasive species into the site. I guess as long as it says the PGA, is sort of approving where it comes from, I guess that covers it for us.
Yes.
So are you suggesting delete this section, that last clause, Pam?
Yeah, with the invasive species part.
No, I already
Oh,
reworded the invasive species, but the source is approved by the DPW.
I
That's,
think that's fine.
that's
Oh,
required, and I think that's currently required
Yeah.
for Phil,
okay.
so I think we want to leave that.
Great. All combustible, the one where you are now. It just occurs to me, if we're talking about BESS, I would say uh, vegetation should be removed for a minimum distance of 10 feet around any BESS. That's easier than trying to describe it as combustible or not.
So what does vegetation mean though? I'm reading the staff comments of where did the distance come from? Um, does that mean no grass at all?
Yeah.
10 feet from
Mm.
any battery, so it's going to be a 10-foot blank pad of concrete or of
Well,
crushed
they have a,
stone that then needs monitored for weeds because that would be vegetation and has to get weed killer on it, or what?
well, any vegetation is combustible. It would be really hard to identify some
No,
kind of
I
vegetation.
understand getting rid of the word combustible. I guess I'm trying to figure out what in practicality does this sentence mean for someone building a BESS?
I think it means that they spray herbicide if they have to keep it bare. It just means that you have nothing available to catch immediately should something happen, should it burst into flame. Stephanie, was that something Aaron could
No,
accept?
this was actually fire. Had this question about, well, everyone sort of had the question about combustible vegetation as a phrase, but then also, I think there are already some guidelines within the fire regulations that identify distances, and that's what they were getting to here.
Oh, okay.
Fire regulations already define what combustible materials are and also the distances you want to have from systems. So I think that's what the point, this was a fire comment.
So they were saying maybe we don't need this at all.
I think so.
Fine. Ten oh five, kept extinguished outside of normal hours of use.
So could we just reword this to from dusk to dawn?
Sure. I think we just needed some kind of parameter to identify
Yeah,
that.
yep. Except in the case of emergency.
Were you
Yeah,
asking me to add that phrase, Pam?
yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay.
I mean, that's the only reason you would want it on. And 08, the next comment is drought resistant species. And what was the comment? Oh yeah, and then it was added and shall be an effective screening at time of planting.
So let me ask about that one. Didn't we have some sort of like within a year of planting? Because what's effective screening? I've always had an issue with the screening section to begin with, but what does effective screening at time of planting mean? Does that mean that we're going to require them to buy 10-foot high plants instead of 5-foot high plants or instead of 2-foot high plants?
Yeah, I think the idea was height, that they be an actual screen versus, um, buying them smaller and then sort of waiting for them over time to actually develop into a screening. And this came from planning folks, so I'm going to defer to them in terms of, I think they just wanted them to be of a certain size where they're an effective screen.
It just seems weird to require it at the time of planting instead of let them grow into it. That's like a massive increase in cost.
Again, I can only say that this
No.
was planning folks, and if you sort of have an issue with the screening, then I think this is just consistent with how it's addressed in
Yeah.
town. They want
I
it
mean,
to
the
be.
PGA can describe, but we do say up above, it just says vegetative buffers to provide an effective year-round visual barrier. And it doesn't say, in 10 years. So it probably we will rely on the PGA to direct the sizing of it. And I don't mind just I mean, we already say it needs to be an effective year-round barrier.
Right. To provide an effective year-round barrier. It's just whether it needs to be at planting or within a certain time of planting.
Do we just leave it as is and let PGA? I mean, I love having an effective screening at time of planting. I think I would support that, but I understand it could be pretty costly. But from the examples that I've seen in different communities, they're putting in pretty good sized stuff.
I
I'll
think
just create a new comment. I'm just trying to figure out where it goes. Because it's not always vegetation, right?
It could be berms, it could be
Or fencing,
fencing.
so it's
Yeah.
not at time of planting.
Time of installation.
Yeah. Or I was thinking when that the project comes online, what's the wording for that?
At time of acceptance.
Time of beginning, when it begins operations or something?
You wouldn't want to say beginning of operations specifically. I mean,
That could be a year after they
yeah.
remove all the
Yeah.
vegetation.
Ooh, which would allow them to plant smaller vegetation initially and let it grow for a year. But installation can work for now, and then we'll just add a comment.
And then we can leave plantings to be drought resistant species, period.
Yeah, I think I
Great,
added the
okay.
period back in.
Good. And so we'll accept that. I think we need to stop. We're at 18:10:9 signage. That's a very good place to stop, and we have made really good progress. And Mandy, thank you as always for your diligence in this. Jennifer, sorry, I didn't see your
Yeah,
hand.
no. I was just going to say to Stephanie, thank you and please thank all the staff. This is like a lot of progress. Not that I contributed to any of it, but in this meeting, because we had, yeah, all these copious comments.
Well, thank you all, and they were, the comments were certainly guiding, so you're just responsive. So thank you all for all the work you're doing.
Really, really appreciate that staff help. It was sort of at a point where we just need to get it across the line. So I'm switching gears. We got about a couple minutes. And I think you all saw from, or maybe you all saw from Athena, that we have January 29, 2026 meeting minutes as action item C, actually. And did you all get a chance to see it, or shall we just bring it up and allow a couple minutes to read it and approve them? I didn't hear any answer.
Yeah,
So
I
let's,
was able to see it before.
okay, anybody need time to read it?
I've been looking at it. I think I'm good.
Okay. So I make a motion that we approve, that we accept the meeting minutes as written.
Second?
Is there a second? Okay, we'll go around. Mandy,
Aye.
Jennifer,
Yes.
Andy,
Yes.
and Pam is a yes. And I will reach out to Andy later to just talk about meeting minutes and where they go as something that you might enjoy doing. Let's put it that. Okay. Next agenda preview, item 5, clean energy bylaw. We made huge progress. One of the things that I did put in our packet for this round was a timeline for ZBA or planning board. Sorry. Was a timeline for this handoff of this document that we're working on, clean energy, having it go to the planning board for an opportunity for them to become acquainted with it before it goes to council and gets referred for public hearings. It's this passing the baton back and forth. I would love to have you all look at the very draft timeline. Mandy had some comments. She added a GOL handoff, and there was something else that you added that was part of that. Anyway, take a look at it, please. I would like to look at it in more detail. I think we can tighten up a lot of these discussions because we're making huge progress. We don't need to be talking about this for 4 meetings, I'm seeing. The only thing I want to say about ZBA and planning board, Andy, you are new to this process, but this committee has the responsibility for getting folks who have expressed interest, getting them rounded up, getting their community activity forms in order and their statements of interest. And then we go through the process a little bit later in the spring to interview and then make some recommendations to the council for planning board and ZBA. Right now, I can tell you that there are only about 3 people that have expressed interest or sent in a CAF this year. And we would need a lot more than that to have a sufficient pool of people to get the work done. So anyway, put the word out. Let's see, announcements. Next CRC meeting is 2 weeks from now on the 26th at 1 p.m. Is there anything else that anyone wants to bring up before we adjourn? And just to clarify, Mandy, all the work that you did today, you'll send a cleaned up draft of that, and I will put it in the packet for the 26th. And it'll also get posted as whatever version we are at now.
Yes. Do you want me to, in that draft, combine, we got new use tables and accessory use table in a completely different document? Would the committee like that just moved into this one document so that it's all in the same document?
Yes, please.
Okay, I will do that.
Thank you. We haven't talked about it, but it's still, but it's,
I'll
yes.
just move them in.
Yep, perfect. Great. Then I make a motion that we adjourn. It is 2:56.
I'll second.
Let's go around. Andy.
Yes, but do you want me to stay on to talk about minutes?
I can give you a call.
Okay. Yes.
Or we could do it at the chair's meeting.
Oh, there you
Okay.
go. Great. Great idea. Jennifer,
Yes.
Mandy,
Aye.
and Pam is an aye. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Athena, for hanging out with us, and Stephanie, so much for your help.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.